Says you were live.
There we go. It's live. It's live
We're not
now.
dead. We're not dead.
No, we're live.
Not that lucky.
Dr. Doll.
Well, Leslie Jordan got killed in his car wreck, but they say he had a medical issue.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I saw the wreck, and it's like that wasn't a bad enough wreck to kill him, but he must have had a heart attack or something while he was driving.
Yeah.
He was the same age as I am.
Oh boy.
He was a riot. He was really funny.
Yeah, he was. I used to watch some of his shows.
Well, he made it. What really made him famous during the pandemic was his Instagram and TikTok accounts and whatnot.
Yeah.
Kevin, I hate to tell you, but you haven't shaved.
I know I hadn't shaved. I'm gonna shave later tonight. How you see my face that well?
Oh gosh, I mean you got HD quality video going here. So welcome everybody to Abnormal Alabama. We got somebody on us already. Thank you for joining. This is one less than a week to what?
Halloween.
Really? We're that close?
Yeah, Halloween.
Ain't that something? I think it's miraculous. And I've got to do this little promotion thing here because next week, look at that.
What? Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Huh? You gonna join us? Halloween night.
I'll probably still be here. I'm kind of nervous about going out. Oh,
You'll do anything not to have to join us. I know.
Hey,
We got Wacky Halloween is with us tonight, and Wacky Halloween, we are down to less than a week to Halloween. Hello and happy haunting to you. Thank you for joining us. Catherine, Lady Cat Marie is down there below. She's got on her picture. That's her permanent mask. Kevin's got his 10 o'clock shadow. It's not a 5 o'clock shadow.
Oh, God.
And we are ready. And Kevin said he had, well, I guess we're going to do some different things here. But Kevin, you said you had some story you want to share tonight?
Yeah, I just want to go ahead and share these for, this thing just has a mind of its own.
Are we going to talk to one of your dolls tonight?
It's not a doll this time. It is a haunted object.
Okay, so he's going to surprise us with a haunted object.
Yeah.
Catherine,
Right now, I just want to.
what is it? Oh, Catherine.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, that's a bad echo there.
Okay. Turn your volume down a little bit, I guess. Or something, I don't know.
I'm just trying to share everything here.
Kevin's getting us shared all over the creation. And whether, just to let everybody know what's happening in the world today. Right here, this is happening on Halloween right there. And if you happen to be in the area, that's great. But if you happen not to be in the area, we plan to do some live streaming of our remix show. And 7 p.m., that is Central Daylight Time, live from Courtyard 31, 1187 First Street North in Alabaster, Alabama. And that's where we plan to be until, who knows, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning. Catherine's going to do a tarot card reading, and I'm going to be doing some magic show. If you like magic, well, tune in. We're going to have fun. Big, big fun. Like Halloween, I'm doing pretty good. I don't know how Kevin and Kat's doing. They'll have to respond to you.
There we go. I got it shared.
Catherine?
No?
Wacky Halloween wants to know how you're doing, but you got a microphone or something.
It's because I'm using this camera on my computer.
On that computer.
Wacky Halloween said, how are you guys doing tonight? Are y'all going to respond?
I'm fine.
I'm doing okay. I'm a little nervous about my crippled father in there, but.
Well, you can always take a break, go check on him. Is your brother?
Yeah, he's with him. He's
Does
got
his
this
dad-
bruising on his foot. They had his whole leg wrapped up tight, and then part of his foot was wrapped up with it. The rehab people fixed it yesterday, but he's worried about this. He's got this big bruise on his foot now. It's swollen.
Does he have a phone next to him?
A phone? Yeah, he's got his own phone.
Well, what I'm saying is he can get a hold of you real quick if he needs to.
Well, yeah, they'll come knock on the door right here.
Well, he can't.
Well, my brother will.
Yeah, well, your brother could fall asleep or get drunk. Who knows?
Oh, Lord.
I just want to make sure Dad take care of. That's all.
Yeah. But I do have a haunted hobby horse here. And there it is.
Is that what I saw you jumping around on the other day?
I was not jumping around on this. I do
That's
not.
what you were using that to twerk with, wasn't it?
No, I was not twerking with it. I do not play with this. It's an antique for one thing. I don't want to mess it up.
Where did you find this out?
This came from a friend of mine who's also an investigator, and he used to collect haunted items, but I don't think he has them. But this belonged to two boys who died. I can't remember how they died or what their names were now, but they used to fight over this and a lot of their toys. And this friend, he claimed that their spirits or their energy still lingered with this, and you could hear them arguing, still fighting over their hobby horse. Maybe they'll come through and give their names tonight.
All right, I'm gonna bounce out and give you more space.
Okay. Make sure my REM pod. Ooh, I gotta charge that thing. All right, I know you're on. Okay. All righty, kiddos. There's the cat paw you can touch on. You can ring the bell there or bump it. And you got Mr. Skull back here if you want to play with that. Uh-oh. Yeah, he's still lighting up a little bit. All right, so we're going to go ahead and try some spirit boxing with this hobby horse. Like I say, it's supposed to be the spirit of two boys. And my buddy said sometimes they would ring that bell hanging there. It's kind of rusted, though. But maybe they'll tap that and ring it. So let's see what we get here real quick. All right. Just getting the... No, I don't want that. I'm just getting the app on here. The Ghost Tube. And there we go. All right, boys. I've got this device laying right under your horse here. If you want to talk, all you have to do is get near that and speak. And I should be able to hear you. Oh, somebody just took a deep breath on there. I'd love to speak to the two boys who own this hobby horse. I've got these devices here. Like I said, you can come near this flat box here laying next to your hobby horse and talk, and I should be able to hear you come through your voice. You've got this toy ball back here you can touch and light up. See, just like I did. You got the bell you can just kind of tap. You don't have to use a lot of energy for that. And you got Mr. REM pod here. If he keeps his charge, I think he's dying on me, though. There we go. I have got to charge him up. I keep forgetting about that. So, tell me I'm talking to the boys here. Tell me your names. Okay, I heard a little bit of a voice. Can you get closer and speak a little louder? Start. I also haven't showed everybody yet. I finally put up my grid light So it's back there in case anything walks around back there. Y'all can see that. In fact, I should have lowered it down toward the floor, but I think it's okay. Why? The lights are there in case if you want to walk through or dance around over there, I can see you in the sparkly lights. Reach? Yeah, you can reach that. Or if you want to just play with your hobby horse here. Does it, you're trying? I think that's what it said. I'm trying. It sounded like it might have been a little boy. Wacky's Halloween asked, how old is that? I'm thinking early 60s. Oh, I wish I knew the names of the boys. Could I'm so sorry. Could you tell me your names? The ones who own this hobby horse?
David by White.
David something. Sounded like by White. Not sure what it was saying.
For a moment there, I thought it said blinded by the light.
Blinded by the light. Oh. Does that grid light hurt your eyes?
Magazine.
Amazing. Yeah, those are kind of like Christmas lights. What are the names of the brothers who own this? The boys who own this hobby horse? Tim. I heard Tim. Is it David and Tim? If you want, you can use that ball to light it up for yes.
Yeah, on the fake.
Yeah, this one right here.
Where are the... It's just me.
So just me? Just you?
With the you.
Are you still fighting over your toy?
The two of...
The two are? I would love to know what their names are. Can you tell me? I think you said Tim. I thought I heard David earlier. Are you brothers? I think that's a yes. What happened to you that you became spirits?
Manager.
Manager of fraud? Is that what you said? Was it some sort of a crime? It's okay. If your family. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. How old are you boys?
Safe.
Be safe. Well, we're trying to be safe. We thought we were going to have a bad storm this evening, but we just had heavy rain right here. Is there something you want to talk about? My name's Kevin, but you probably already know that. I just want to make sure to repeat that. Are you boys still fighting over who rides the hobby horse? It's okay for me to pick it up. I want to show it a little better here. It says Ride 'em Cowboy on there. It's got a bell on it. I'll turn it over here so people can see the hair. You can hear the bell jingling as I move it. Now I want to ask. Uh-oh. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Does this skull bother you? Is it too scary looking? Here, I'll move it since he's kind of dead now anyway. I've got to charge him up. I think that was some sort of an approval of me moving it. We'll just put the bell over here in this ball, and you can light that up. It's just waiting on you. Uh-oh, here we go. It's just waiting on you to light it up. So Wacky's Halloween said they had a heavy thunderstorm come through. There's this. Oh, sounds like you're coming through now. Are you the ones with the hobby horse? That sounded like children. Have you come to play with your hobby horse? Do you want to go run through the lights over there? That would probably be a lot of fun. See if you can see your shadow on the wall. Yeah, that was a deep voice. It comes through every once in a while. Oh, there it is again. Loud and clear. Anything you want to tell us tonight? Double date or double dare? I remember hearing boys say, I double dare you. I triple dog dare you.
Quit daring people.
All right,
All right, then, he said. Are the boys being shy? You came through once already. I could hear you. One of them chattered loud.
Does your Ghost app there show you the words as it says them?
The Lord.
The
You
bar.
talking about, you talking does the app show the words?
Yes.
No,
Say it.
he said just say it.
Say it.
No, it doesn't show the words. There's a little thing that, like, little guy right there pops up when somebody's talking. Let me try clicking on that little guy, see what that does. No.
160.
160.
160.
You got 160 spirits in your house.
Is that
Got
what
it.
you're?
Oh, you got that light there. That's what you got over there. I see.
Yeah, the grid light over there.
Yeah.
Oh, you starting to play some
You
disco
ever,
music.
you ever catch anything with that grid light?
I never have, and on investigations I haven't seen it yet, but we only used it a few times. A deep voice spoke again. He's hard to hear, though. Well, I wish I would do, light the ball up if you can. If you want to, you can use the energy off this box, this flat box here, and light up that ball.
So, he was.
He was. He 3 times he was. He was what? He was playing with the horse, or he? Don't want to miss anything over in the lights over there.
I'm in the dark.
Things they ask.
The same.
Sound like things they ask. What are they asking? Who is they? I didn't.
You what?
I didn't hear what that said. Are the hobby horse boys still here? Yes. Are they still tough? Are they still fighting with each other? Did you boys have trouble sharing toys? Whoa. Which one of you was the oldest?
Good person.
Good person?
Immigration.
Immigration.
God is a.
God is what?
God is what?
It's your show.
It's
No.
your show. She said, it's your show.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm glad they admitted that.
That man.
That man over there. Is that what you were saying? Is there a man over there? Oh, that's- Can he, or if there is someone over there, can you move through the lights and let me see you? Or will you please move through the lights and let me see you?
Mm-hmm.
It's cold.
It's cold. Is it cold where you are?
And like that.
What else is it like over where you are?
So have we learned anything?
I learned that these lights look kind of cool here.
I've got one of those as well. Let's see. I've got it here on my desk. I don't think of it. See? Right there.
I haven't heard a lot yet. I haven't heard a lot from these boys. They came through a piece, but I think they're busy playing with each other or fighting over their toys. I'm not. Did I hear you say it's Ichabod? Is an Ichabod Crane from the Headless Horseman?
Horseman.
Do you play Headless Horseman with your
Well,
hobby?
it's interesting because a little bit earlier, Kevin was calling his mother a whore.
I was not. See, I knew I was going to come back.
Say what?
My poor dearly departed mother. I was describing what's going on with Dad, and he had to sponge off, and I jokingly said my mother used to, I jokingly said my mother used to call that when you just sponge off because you can't get a shower. She called it a horse.
She called a whore.
She didn't call it calf. Putting words in people's mouth, right
How
there.
you say that?
Well, it's 7:30, so we're going to do stories and stuff. Are you?
Have you got stories? What kind of stories we got tonight?
Well, I had a ghost story and a couple of creepy dreams we talked about a few days ago that I thought would be fun to share.
Creepy dreams?
And I don't know, is the cat Marie gonna try cards tonight, or
Cat Marie, are you with us?
she's off the thing right now? So if she was, we wouldn't hear. Was there any last thing you'd like to say before we move on? I didn't quite understand you. Can you say that? Can you repeat that slowly?
Thank you very much.
Very much. I think you were trying to say thank you very much. Well, I thank you very much for talking to us. All right, before it gets too late, and just in case I have to leave out of here later, I'm going to go ahead and stop the spirit box. And I thank y'all for talking to me. If there's any spirits that don't belong here, please go back to where you came from. And all spirits, back away. I'm going to count down from 5, and then I'm going to cut this off. So go back to where you belong by the time I get to 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Goodbye. All right. There we go. There we go. There we go. All right. Let me get that over here. All right. It'd be cool if I had that light behind me, but let's see. Dr. Kelsey, or Dr. Doll, he's calling himself tonight. He had a doll mask on earlier before we went live. I guess he's checking on Lady Cat Marie. I think she'll want to try to do some card readings a little later, so stick around for that. I'm going to share, because it's Halloween, I'm going to share a creepy ghost story, and I'm going to see if I can put a creepy picture up here if we've got any left on here while I share that story. Oh, I'm sure I've got something on here I can add. Let's see here. Let us see here. I'll put this ghostly picture up while I'm telling this story. This is the story of Julia, and I may have shared this at one time before, maybe even last Halloween, but who cares? I'm going to share it again. The story of Julia's ghost. And this might have happened in your neighborhood or a neighborhood you know about. Maybe you've heard this before. Is it true? We'll just have to leave that up to you to guess. This happened in a small town that could be anywhere, might even be yours. It involved a woman named Julia, a recluse who lived alone for years after her husband died. She never left her house. Neighbors who felt sorry for her often delivered groceries to her to make sure she had food and supplies, but she barely spoke to them. She had no other family to speak of and no close friends. They say that living in solitude eventually drove her crazy, out of her mind. She became suicidal. One New Year's Eve, she decided to go through with ending her life. According to a certain Leon Hart, 30 years ago on that fateful night, he walked with a group of fellow neighborhood men around the blocks, checking on homes and businesses to make sure no prowlers were about. You see, crime in that area took a harsh rise, and some business and homes were burglarized. The police department was small, and the men of the area took it upon themselves to take turns walking in groups each night before midnight around the neighborhood, shotguns in hand, just to give some added security and make sure no prowlers skulked about. A shrill cry pierced the night, the cry of a woman in pain. It came from the direction of Julia's house. Leon and his group raced around the block and down the street to the dead end where her house was located. Smoke rose into the air, winding through the tree branches above her house. At first, they thought the house was on fire. As they got closer, they realized it was not the house. The flames came from the balcony of her second floor. Julia stood there on the balcony, her arms spread heavenward, flames completely enveloping her body. The men got close enough to see that her skin was already melting away. Her hair burned off her head, and what flesh was left completely charred. The smell of burning flesh filled the air around them, causing one of the men to hurl his dinner. Julia flung herself off the balcony, her body landing with a sick, wet thud on the driveway below. The sound of sirens came quickly as the fire department, called already by a neighbor, arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, Julia was already dead, when she hit the ground, her body completely blackened and almost fleshless. Julia was given a quick burial in the local cemetery with no kind of funeral save the few neighbors who tried to help her by showing up to pay their respects. Here is where the New Year's nightmare began. Each year after, on New Year's Eve, the charred, gruesome apparition of Julia was seen outside of her house, screaming into the night. If anyone dared to get close, the terrifying ghost chased them away. No one dared enter her house, and the real estate company could not sell it due to the stories surrounding it, so it remained vacant. Leon said many times on his rounds, even on nights other than New Year's Eve, especially even around Halloween night, he reportedly heard her cries as he walked the neighborhood, even seeing a fleeting glimpse of her apparition on her lawn before she disappeared. Each time she looked just as hideous, flesh dripping off her body, the smell of charred skin filling the air. The worst part of this nightmare was Halloween night in 2010, when a burglar decided to make a break-in to ring in midnight of Halloween and see what he might find. But unfortunately, he chose the wrong house. As Leon and his friends made their rounds and incidentally decided to stay away from Julia's house, with it being Halloween night and the sightings of her nightmarish apparition being more frequent and more horrible that particular night and New Year's and all, they noticed as they passed her street a strange figure running over her yard and to her front door. This was no ghost, but the figure of a tall man dressed all in black. Leon encouraged the men to forget the ghost and check this out. If nothing else, to warn the man away from that place. By the time they reached the house on foot, the man was already inside, the front door broken into and standing open. As they entered the house, they heard screams, one male and one female, coming from above. Looking at the stairs that led to the second floor, they stared in horror as Julia's burnt ghost came walking slowly down the stairs, her hand around the throat of the burglar, holding him with otherworldly strength into the air with that one charred hand and squeezing his throat. The man hung there, attempting to fight, but gasped and choked as he grew weaker and weaker. One of the men raised his shotgun and fired at Julia, but the bullet went straight through her head as if she was not even there and into the wall behind her. She screeched at the men and rushed toward them, the burglar's body still in tow. They ran from the house as they heard the sickening sound of cracking bone, followed by one last gruesome gasp from the burglar. When the police arrived, they found the burglar's body at the foot of the steps, his skull crushed inward and blood running from his mouth and nose. This was the last straw. The residents decided to end the curse once and for all, burning down Julia's house to the ground, then giving her a proper graveside funeral service where all of the town turned out to pay their respects. This seemed to quieten Julia's ghost, as her apparition was never seen or heard after. But the memory of that gruesome sight, that sickening smell, and the sound of cracking bone still echoes in the memories of Leon and the men who had the unfortunate bad luck to be in on Julia's home that night and witness her final hurrah. And that is the story of Julia's ghost. That looks like Dr. Kelsey. He's not in, but now he's changed his name to Dr. Evil. So hopefully he and Lady Cat Marie will be on shortly. Because I wanted to tell about a few dreams I had. one night earlier this year, probably about 3 months ago, about like that, I had a weird, kind of frightening dream one night. I have no idea. I was going to say I don't have any idea what it meant, but I think it's just from watching too many horror movies and being so obsessed with ghosts. But I sometimes, and a lot of times, he's just in time to hear my dream story.
Oh gosh, it must be.
But a lot of times here lately, I dream about going back to college for some reason, classes. And this particular dream, I was young in the dream, and I was sitting on college campus outside. I didn't recognize the place, but I was sitting outside some sort of auditorium out in the outdoors there next to these glass door entrances. And this beautiful redhead comes by, and she's headed in, and I somehow recognized her, even though I look back and don't have a clue who she was, but I recognized her in the dream and followed her in because she was headed toward the class I needed to go to. We're just talking. And we go in, and we're entering the auditorium. It looks more like a theater where you go watch movies. There's a big screen up front, and I walk down these long stairs with her down into the seating area. And there are about 7, 8 other people sitting around. They're kind of close together in these aisles of seats. It's those fold down seats like you see in the movie theater. But instead of, how the theater auditoriums are kind of slanted up with the rows of seats, this was flat. So we're sitting down. It's very dark. There's no lights. There's some kind of dim light coming from somewhere, kind of a bluish dark light. But I can make out everybody, and the girl sits down next to me. And there's something bluish about this room I'm in. So I look around. I can't remember what they were talking about. There's a little bit of chuckling and joking around. And then I say, "Are we going to watch a movie? When are they going to show the movie? What movie are we watching? What is there a teacher coming? What?" I'm just asking these questions. And finally, one of them looks around. I notice their faces now look kind of drawn and sunken in. And they look around at me, and one of them says, "Don't you know? We're dead." I said, "You're dead?" And I said, "Am I dead too?" And they just kind of grin and start chuckling. And all of a sudden, I realize this room is full of water. We're underwater. So I start swimming up toward the ceiling of the auditorium, looking for air. And I get what I guess is toward the surface, and I wake up in bed. So that was a freaky dream. So I guess I dreamed I was dead and a ghost with a bunch of other ghosts in a water-filled theater, and I have no idea. Too bad Dr. Evil and Lady Catherine aren't on right now to explain what they think about that dream. But that was very creepy. And then my dad told about a dream earlier this week that he had 6 years ago when my mom passed away. The first 3 weeks, he didn't have any kind of dreams about her or her death. And then all of a sudden, one night he was asleep. Obviously he was asleep, but he was dreaming about being in the hospital where she had been before she died. He's going in that long walkway to go down to where you get to the elevators and the rooms and everything. And he sees my mom at the end, and she calls his name, and she comes running toward him. And she looks like she did when she was young. So he goes running toward her, and he's like, "What in the world? She's alive." So they run together, and they embrace. They're hugging each other, and then suddenly these doctors show up and pull them apart. And 2 of them, I guess orderlies, are dragging her away, and she's calling his name, and he's wanting to go after her. And this tall doctor, keeps turning him around to face him. He says, "You can't go with her." He said, "I need to go." He said, "You cannot go with her." He said, "I need to go see about her." And he says, "Sir, that's not your wife." My dad looks at him. He says, "Yes, that is. What do you mean?" And the doctor says, "Your wife died 3 weeks ago." And right then he woke up in bed. So that was pretty creepy. Billy Bird is back. I brought my flute. Where's yours? Now, where is Kelsey and Catherine? Now, they need to be on here. We've actually got Billy Bird back. Here's my flute. I don't know where Catherine and Kelsey are. I see him on here. Here, I'll show you. There's his desk. Oh, he's back now. There. I was just showing Billy Bird. Look, we got Billy Bird back.
Okay. What, do you want me to bring up that twerking video? Is that what it was?
No, he asked where my flute was. Remember, he's
Oh,
the one that likes the flute.
I thought everybody wanted to see you twerk again.
No, they don't want to see that.
All right, my turn. The Trapper's Revenge. Have you ever told this story?
Nope.
About a mile back from the river stood the cabin of Nick Walsey, who in the 1800s was known to the river settlements as a hunter and trapper of correct aim, shrewdness, endurance, and tactitum habit. For many years, he lived in the cabin alone, except for the company of his dog. But while visiting a small settlement in the wilderness, he was struck with the engaging manner of one of the girls. He repeated the visit, and thereafter he found cause to go to the settlement frequently. At length, won the maid's consent to be his wife. The civil marriage ceremony was performed, but the wedding was interrupted with an almost tragic manner. For a surly fellow who had loved the girl, yet who never had found courage to declare himself, was wrought to such a jealous fury at the discovery of Walsey's good fortune that he sprang at him with a knife and would have dispatched him on the spot had not the man's faithful hound leaped at his throat and borne him to the ground. Walsey disarmed the fellow and kicked and cuffed him to the edge of the wood, while the whole company shouted with laughter at the ignominious punishment and approved it. A year or more passed. Walsey and his wife were happy in their free and simple life, happy too in their little babe. Walsey was seldom absent from his cabin for any considerable length of time, and usually returned to it before the night set in. One evening he noticed that the grass and twigs were bent near his house for some passing foot that, with the keen eye of the woodsman, he saw was not his wife's. Some hunter, he said, saw the house when he passed here and stopped to look in, for the trail led to his window and diverged thence to the forest again. A few days later, as Walsey was returning, he came on the footprints that were freshly made, and a shadow crossed his face. On nearing the door, he stumbled on the body of his dog, lying rigid on the ground. "How did this happen, Minnie?" he cried as he flung open the door. The wife answered in a low voice, "Oh, hush, you'll wake the child." Nick Walsey entered the cabin and stood as one turned to marble. Minnie, his wife, sat on the gold hearth, her face and hands cut and blackened, her dress torn, her eyes glassy, a meaningless smile on her lips. In her arms she pressed the body of her infant, its dress soaked with blood, and the head of the little creature lay on the floor beside her. She crooned softly over the cold clay as if hushing it to sleep, and when Walsey at length found words, she only whispered, "Hush, you'll wake him." That the night went heavily on, day dawned, and the crooning became lower and lower still. Through all the day, the bereft woman rocked to and fro upon the floor, and the agonized husband hung about her, trying in vain to comfort, to bind her wounds, to get some explanation of the mystery that confronted him. The second night set in, and it was evident that it would be the last for Minnie. Her strength failed until she allowed herself to be placed on a couch of skins, while the body of her child was gently lifted from her arms. Then, for a brief few minutes, her reason was restored as she found words to tell her husband how the man whose murderous attack he had thwarted at the wedding had come to the cabin, shot the dog that had rushed out to defend the place, beat the woman back from the door, tore the baby from its bed, slashed its head off with a knife, and flinging the little body into her lap, departed with the words, "This is my revenge. I am satisfied." Before the sun was in the east again, Minnie died in her husband's arms. Wolsey sat for hours in the ruin of his happiness, his breathing alone proving that he was alive. And when at last he arose and went out of the house, there were neither tears nor outcry. He saddled his horse, took up the carefully wrapped body of his wife, and rode off to the westward. At nightfall, he came to the settlement where he had won his bride, and relating to the assembled settlers what had happened, he demanded that the murderer be given up to him. His demand was readily granted, whereupon the settlers advanced on the cowering wretch and, with a quick fling and jerk of a rawhide rope, bound his arms on his side. Then they tied the body of Minnie to her killer and flung the two, one living, one dead, onto the back of the horse, securing them there with so many turns of rope that nothing could displace them. With a shout, the settlers sent the animal plunging, foaming, and snorting into the wilderness. When it had vanished and the hoof beats were no longer heard, Nick Wolseley took his rifle in his arm and left the settlement forever. Tradition now says that the horse never stopped in its mad gallop, but that on still nights it can still be heard sweeping through the woods along the river like a whirlwind, and that as the sound goes by, a smothered voice breaks out in cursing and appeal, then in harsh and dreadful laughter. And that is the trapper's revenge. Hello? You're muted.
There we go. I was saying, ooh.
Was that a good story?
Yes, that was a good story. All that hacking and killing and
And revenge. Oh, there you go.
I got a creepy one here called Tug of War. Now, my cousin, P.S. Wooden, is a successful businessman, and he's got a pretty solid head on his shoulders. But when he told me that he owned a haunted house, I told him he was plumb crazy. It was a nice red brick house about a half mile above the bridge, and it sat right in front of an old Indian burial ground. Wooden had rented out the house more than once, but no one ever stayed there for long. I'm telling you, the tenants all claim the house is haunted, Wooden told me. I'm not making it up. I think maybe it has something to do with that old Indian burial ground that's in the back. I think it has something to do with the quality of the people you rent the house to, I snapped. Honestly, Wooden, I might believe there were rats in the floorboards or even squirrels in the attic, but ghosts? Why don't you stay there a few nights, suggested Wooden. Check the place out. I won't even charge you any rent. Charge me rent, I snapped again. You should pay me for dispelling the rumors. A haunted house. I packed a bag that very night and moved into the house. It was a large house and quite comfortable. I put my things away and spent a quiet evening reading a book before I went to bed. I fell asleep almost immediately and was dreaming happily about food when the covers were snatched right off my bed. I woke up at once, blinking blurrily in the darkened room. Good gravy, what a terrible draft, I mumbled, sliding to the floor and picking up the covers. I staggered back to bed with my covers and went back to sleep. I had the top quilt clutched in my hand, the corner tucked under my chin. Suddenly, the quilt was ripped out of my grasp so fiercely that it yanked me halfway down the bed. I snapped awake again. You cut that out, I shouted to the irritating draft. Honestly, can't a man get some sleep around here? I fetched my covers, tucked them firmly in around me, and went back to sleep. The next morning, I carefully examined my room, trying to find the annoying draft that had kept blowing my covers off during the night before. The room was well constructed, and there didn't seem to be any gaps around the windows or the door. Still, I decided I was overlooking something, since I knew for a fact that there was no such thing as a ghost. I went to work that day and forgot all about my interrupted sleep as I immersed myself in the various tasks that crossed my desk. It wasn't until I finished a late supper and went up to my room that I recalled the incident with the blankets. Ghosts, balderdash, and poppycock, I growled, quoting some of the favorite Victorian sayings of the character in the book I was reading. I settled back against the pillows and read for an hour before turning off the light. As I made myself comfortable, the door to the room blew open with an eerie creak. For a moment, I had the strange impression that someone had come into the room. What nonsense, I said aloud and turned over on my side. A moment later, the covers were snatched right off my body. Hey, I shouted, sitting bolt upright. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the quilts from the floor. I'm going to have to get that draft fixed in the morning, I defiantly told the darkness, climbing back into my bed and tucking the covers firmly about me. I kept the top quilt clutched in both hands and lay waiting for the strange draft to strike again. Nothing happened. Nonsense, I muttered, turning over and letting go of the top quilt. I was nearly asleep when the covers were whipped aside, leaving me completely bare. I do not believe in ghosts, I shouted, climbing out of bed and grabbing the quilts. I returned to the bed and slept with the covers firmly wrapped around my arms for the rest of the night. I found it much harder to keep my attention on work the next day. My sleep had been restless, to say the least, since I kept expecting my blankets to be blown off by that strange draft. That night, I went into the bedroom with a hammer and several nails and nailed the bedroom door shut. I'd like to see a draft get through that, I said, punctuating each word with a strike of my hammer. Was it my imagination, or did the air suddenly get chilly? I shivered. Ah, rubbish, I exclaimed, trying to rid myself of the notion that I had angered something or someone. I felt certain that I would have an undisturbed sleep. Nothing was coming through that door tonight. I drifted off peacefully and was deep in dreamland when the bedroom door crashed open and the covers were snatched off my body so hard they left marks on my bare legs. Cut that out, I yelled, jumping to my feet and grabbing the covers from the floor. Immediately, the covers were yanked from my arms. I managed to grab the end of the blankets and pulled back, really angry now. Back and forth, back and forth. The invisible presence and I wrestled, knocking into furniture, rolling right across the bed, neither of us giving an inch. Finally, I let go of the blanket so suddenly that it snapped backward, and I heard a distinct thump, as if something or someone had fallen to the floor. Get out, I shouted. I must have won that round in our game of tug-of-war because the door slammed shut with a rather sulky sound, like a spoiled child denied a toy. Good night and good riddance, I exclaimed, reclaiming my covers and climbing into bed. I examined the door in the morning, and I could not find a single nail left in place. I couldn't even find the holes where I had driven the nails into the wood the night before. That creeped me out something awful, but in for a penny, in for a pound, as the saying goes. I was committed to my course, and nothing was going to keep me from making that house habitable, ghost or not. For several nights in a row, I played tug of war with the unseen presence in the house. Sometimes I lay on the bed and just pulled and pulled against the spirit that was trying to deprive me of my covers. Sometimes we raged back and forth around the room like we did the night I nailed the door shut. I finally admitted defeat the night the spirit pulled me and the blankets right off the bed. It yanked the blankets straight toward the bedroom window with me sailing along behind them. I let out a yelp and let go of the blankets just as the window opened with a bang, and the blankets sailed through. I hit the floor with a terrible thump that shook the floorboards. I did not hear a sound, but there was a distinctly triumphant air about the room as I slowly got to my feet. "All right, you win," I said in disgust. "I believe in ghosts. Do you hear me? I believe in ghosts. Are you happy now?" I felt the invisible presence saunter out of the room. It closed the door with a smug creak. I shook my fist at the door. Then I turned on the light, packed my bag, and went home. The next morning, Wooden went to the red brick house, retrieved the quilts from the front lawn, and had them washed, since I refused to go anywhere near that stupid house again. Oh, that's a good creepy story. I think Dr. Evil is on a conversation now, so
Yes, you
maybe
ready?
I can tell a short.
Are you ready? No, I'm going to tell you. My turn.
Oh, okay. You go ahead. You go ahead.
I thought we'd go back and forth. Now, our cousin, P.S. Wooden, is a successful businessman, and he's got a pretty solid head on his shoulders. But when he told me that he owned a haunted house, I told him that he was plumb crazy. It was a nice red brick house with about a half mile above the bridge, and it sat right in front of an old Indian burial ground. Well, we know where this is headed, right? Wooden had rented out the house more than once, but no one ever stayed there for long. "I'm telling you, the tenants all claim the house is haunted," Wooden told me. "I'm not making it up. I think maybe it has something to do with that old Indian burial ground in the back."
I just told that story.
Okay, all right. Well, I got more. Okay, so just a minute. What about the cow's head?
I've not told that one.
Oksana lived. Okay, you're laughing. Have you told this one?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, you're laughing at me.
Okay.
Why are you laughing at me?
I was still chuckling at the thing before, and then Billy Burr said, "Hello."
Are you making fun of me?
I'm not making fun of
You're making fun of me.
you.
Oksana lived in a small house on the edge of town with her father, his stepmother, and her stepsister. Oksana's stepmother disliked Oksana, favoring her true daughter, Olena. Soon after her father's remarriage, Oksana found that all the housework fell to her, while Olena idled her days away. Oksana's father was a timid man and could not bring himself to defy his wife. So Oksana wore Olena's cast-off clothes, and her hands grew red and chapped from scrubbing in the cold, while Olena attended parties, growing lazy and spoiled. One year, when the winter snows were particularly fierce, Oksana's family ran out of money. Oksana's stepmother began nagging her father to send Oksana away because they could not afford to keep two girls. Reluctantly, Oksana's father agreed. He took Oksana to a cottage deep in the woods and left her there. Oksana was very frightened. The woods were said to be filled with demons and monsters, but Oksana was also practical. She entered the cottage with her small bundle and found a fireplace, a lopsided table, and a rusty old pot. Oksana put away the loaf of bread, the knife, and the slab of cheese her father had given her. She folded the blanket and laid it near the fireplace. Then she collected wood and built a fire. Oksana knew the bread and cheese would not last her all winter, so she made a snare using the thin, flexible branches of the trees and caught a snow rabbit to eat. She also dug into the deep snow and found some roots and berries for food. By dark, Oksana had melted water for drinking and used the rest of it to make stew. So Oksana ate well. Then she lay down near the fire for the night, listening to the wind howl and pretending to herself that she was not frightened of the woods. It was midnight when the knock came. Knock, knock, knock. It echoed hollowly through the dark cottage. Oksana woke with a start, her heart pounding in fear. It came again. Knock, knock, knock. Oksana thought of the monster. She hid under a blanket, praying the thing would go away. Knock, knock, knock. Oksana rose. Grabbing a branch, she crept towards the door. The wind howled eerily down the chimney. Oksana swung the door open. There was nothing there. Her heart pounded fiercely as she stared out at the snow whipping about in the light of her small fire. Then she looked down. Oksana let out a shriek of terror and leapt back, dropping her stick. It was a demon, an evil spirit. It had no body. "Who are you?" Oksana stuttered, clutching the door with her shaking hands. "I am a cow's head," it replied. Indeed, Oksana saw at once that it was. The head was brown, with curved horns and a strange, haunted eyes. "I am cold and hungry. May I sleep by your fire?" the cow's head asked. His voice was cold and lifeless. Oksana gulped down her horror. Of course," she said. "Lift me over the threshold," demanded the cow's head haughtily. Oksana did as she was bidden. "Place me near the fire." Anger warred with passion inside her, but compassion won. Oksana put it next to the fire. "I am hungry," said the cow's head. "Feed me." Oksana thought of her meager food supply. The stew left in the pot was for her breakfast. She fed it to the cow's head. "I will sleep now," it said. There was no softening in its attitude toward her. Nonetheless, Oksana made it comfortable for the night, giving it her blanket and sleeping in a cold corner with her own cloak to keep her warm. When she woke in the morning, the cow's head was gone. Where it had slept was a large trunk filled with the most beautiful gowns she had ever seen. Under the gowns lay heaps of gold and jewels. Oksana stared blankly at the riches in front of her. Her father's voice roused her. "Daughter, I am come." Oksana forgot the trunk in her joy. She ran into his arms. He had defied her stepmother to come and bring her back to their home. "Papa, come see." Oksana exclaimed as she pulled him into the cottage. Her words tumbled over each other as she explained. Her father took her home. She was honored in her town for her compassion and her bravery and won scores of suitors. She married soon after her return from the cottage. Hearing Oksana's story and seeing the riches she had received, Olena went to the cottage in the forest and spent the night there. But when Cow's Head appeared, she was too lazy to serve it. In the morning, all her gowns had turned to rags and her possessions to dust. But Oksana lived to a ripe old age in happiness and prosperity. It pays to be good. Hello?
Ooh,
Hello?
yeah, I'm here. I was just waiting on you.
Is anybody home? Is anybody home?
Yes, I'm gonna I guess we're on the same link, but I'm gonna go way to the bottom list to read so we don't get the
Do
same
what?
story. I guess I'm on the same link as you with the story. So
What is this?
to the bottom of that to find stories so we don't get, we don't tell the same story.
What, Kevin, what are you doing, Kevin?
Okay, Dr. Evil. Let's see, I got one here called Axe Murder Hollow. Susan and Ned were driving through a wooded, empty section of highway. Lightning flashed. Thunder roared. The sky went dark in the torrential downpour. We'd better stop, said Susan. Ned nodded his head in agreement. He stepped on the brake, and suddenly the car started to slide on the slick pavement. They plunged off the road and slid to a halt at the bottom of an incline. Pale and shaking, Ned quickly turned to check if Susan was all right. When she nodded, Ned relaxed and looked through the rain-soaked windows. I'm going to go see how bad it is, he told Susan, and went out into the storm. She saw his blurry figure in the headlight, walking around the front of the car. A moment later, he jumped in beside her, soaking wet. The car's not badly damaged, but we are wheel deep in mud, he said. I'm going to have to go for help. Susan swallowed nervously. There would be no quick rescue here. He told her to turn off the headlights and lock the doors until he returned. Axe Murder Hollow. Although Ned had not said the name aloud, they both knew what he had been thinking when he told her to lock the car. This was the place where a man had once taken an axe and hacked his wife to death in a jealous rage over an alleged affair. Supposedly, the axe-wielding spirit of the husband continued to haunt this section of the road. Outside the car, Susan heard a shriek, a loud thump, and a strange gurgling noise, but she could not see anything in the darkness. Frightened, she shrank down into her seat. She sat in silence for a while, and then she noticed another sound. Bump, bump, bump. It was a soft sound like something being blown by the wind. Suddenly, the car was illuminated by a bright light. An official-sounding voice told her to get out of the car. Ned must have found a police officer. Susan unlocked the door and stepped out of the car. As her eyes adjusted to the bright light, she saw it. Hanging by his feet from the tree next to the car was the dead body of Ned. His bloody throat had been cut so deeply that he was nearly decapitated. The wind swung his corpse back and forth so that it thumped against the tree. Bump, bump, bump. Susan screamed and ran toward the voice in the light. As she drew close, she realized the light was not coming from a flashlight. Standing there was the glowing figure of a man with a smile on his face and a large, solid, and definitely real axe in his hands. She backed away from the glowing figure until she bumped into the car. Playing around when my back was turned, the ghost whispered, stroking the sharp blade of the axe with his fingers. You've been very naughty. The last thing she saw was the glint of the axe blade in the eerie and incandescent light. Oh, let's get back Dr. Evil here. Oh,
You messed me
there
up.
we go.
So what? So One Last Rebel. Have you done that one?
Nope.
Peter Matthews. Let's do this one. Is anybody enjoying these stories at all? Does this mean anything? Yes, I am. Okay, let's go for another story. Heck with it. Just a freaking heck with it, huh? Young
Okay.
man, I'll give you $5 a week to be the caretaker in Prince Hall, Mr. Quid said angrily to fiddler Peter Matthews on an autumn evening. Peter Matthews had been taunting the old gentleman with being afraid to sleep in his own domain, for Prince Hall was reputed to be haunted. With the eyes of all the tavern loungers on him, he could hardly decline so flattering a proposition. After some hemming and hawing, he agreed. Matthews played but 2 or 3 more tunes that evening, but his heart wasn't in it. When Quid finished his mulled cider and departed, Peter too made his homeward way in thoughtful mood. Prince Hall stood in a lonely, weed-grown garden near Chester, Pennsylvania, and thither repaired Peter as next day's twilight shut down with a mattress, blanket, cosmicals, his beloved fiddle, and a flask of whiskey. Ensconcing himself in the room that was least depressing in appearance, he stuffed rags into the vacant panes, lighted a candle, started a blaze in the fireplace, and ate his supper. Not so bad a place after all, mumbled Peter as he warmed himself at the fire and the flask. Then, taking out his violin, he began to play. The echo of his music emphasized the emptiness of the house. The damp got into the strings so that they sounded tubby, and there were unintentional quavers in the melody whenever the trees swung against the windows and splashed them with the rain, or with a distant shutter fell a creaking. Finally, he stirred the fire, bolted the door, snuffed the candle, took a courageous pull at the liquor, flung off his coat and shoes, rolled his blanket around him, stretched himself on the mattress, and fell asleep. Peter was awakened by, well, he could not say what exactly, only he became suddenly as wide awake as ever he had been in his life, and listened for some sound that he knew was going to come out of the roar of the wind and the slamming, grating, and whistling about the house. Yes, there it was, a tread and a clank on the stair. The door, so tightly bolted, flew open, and there entered a dark figure with a steeple-crowned hat, cloak, jackboots, sword, and corselet. The terrified fiddler wanted to howl, but his voice was gone. I am Peter Prince, Governor General of this Swedish Majesty's American colonies and builder of this house, said the figure. 'Tis the night of the autumnal equinox, when my friends meet here to revel. Take my fiddle and come, play, but not speak. And whether he wished to or no, Peter was drawn to follow the figure, which he could make out by the phosphor gleam of it. Downstairs they went, doors swinging open before them, and along corridors that clanged to the stroke of the spectre's boot heels. They came to the ancient reception room, and as they entered it, Peter was dazzled. The floor was smooth with wax. Logs snapped in the fireplace, though the flame was somewhat blue. The old hangings and portraits looked fresh, and in the light of the wax candles, 100 people in the brave array of old times walked, curtsied, and seemed to laugh and talk. As the fiddler appeared, every eye was turned on him in a disquieting way, and when he addressed them to his bottle, from every throat came a hollow laugh. Finding his way to a chair, he sank into it and put his instrument in position. At the first note, the couples took hands, and as he struck into a jig, they began to circle swiftly, leaping wondrous high. Faster went the music, for the whiskey was at work in Peter's noodle, and wilder grew the dance. It was as if the storm had came in through the windows of that blowing these people hither and yon, around and around. The fiddler vaguely wondered at himself, for he had never played so well, though he had never heard the tune before. All at once, Governor Fritz loomed in the middle of the room. Extending his hand, he ordered the dance to cease. Thou hast played well, fiddler, he said, and shalt be paid. Then, at his signal, came two men tugging at a strong box that Fritz unlocked. It was filled with gold pieces. "Hold thy fiddle bag," commanded the governor, and Peter did so, watching, open mouthed, the transfer of a double handful of treasure from box to sack. Another such handful followed, and another. At the fourth, Peter could no longer contain himself. He forgot the injunction not to speak and shouted gleefully, "Lord Harry, here's luck." There was a shriek of demon laughter. The scene was lost in darkness, and Peter fell insensible. In the morning, a tavern haunting friend, anxious to know if Peter had met with any adventure, entered the house and went cautiously from room to room, calling on the watcher to show himself. There was no response. At last, they stumbled on the empty whiskey bottle and knew that Peter must be nearby. Sure enough, there he lay in a great room with dust and mold thick on everything, and his fiddle smashed into 1,000 pieces. Peter, on being awakened, looked ruefully about him, then sprang up and eagerly demanded his money. "What money?" asked his friend. The fiddler clutched his green bag, opened it, shook it. There was nothing. Nor was there any delay in Peter's exit from that mansion, and when 24 hours after the house went up in flames, he averred that the ghost had set it afire and that he knew where they brought the coals from. And that is the story of One Last Rebel. Billy Bird says, "You guys tell the best stories. Thank you both. I missed Tuesday nights with you." And Billy Bird, we got to tell you, we have missed Tuesday nights with you as well, my friend. Heck,
Yeah.
and I assume Kevin the Cane has more. And in the silence of the night, as the storms flew, the winds blew, the rains came, a fiddle played, a flute was heard in the background, in the silence of a haunted house full of haunted dolls and other haunted items, and the flute played, and the rotund man twerked. He showed his big white ass to the world as he twerked, and there's a song.
He thinks he's funny. Well, I got a stove right here.
He got starving.
This one is, hey, where'd it go? There it is. This one is called Black Magic. Mad Henry was a hermit who lived alone in a decrepit mansion at the edge of town. Rumors were rife about the wild-eyed man. Some folks said he was a magician who called upon the powers of darkness to wreak havoc upon his neighbors. Others called him a mad doctor who could restore life to foul corpses from the local cemetery. No respectable citizen in town had anything to do with Mad Henry. Then one year, a new family moved to town with a lovely daughter, Rachel, who caught Mad Henry's eye. He showered the maiden with gifts, goblets of pure gold, necklaces of pearl, and a pot of daisies that never dropped a single petal. Despite the gifts, Rachel fell in love with another, Jeffrey, a handsome young man just home from university. A week after meeting, they eloped, leaving behind a stunned Mad Henry. When Rachel and Jeffrey returned from the elopement, they threw a big ball and invited everyone in town. While Rachel was waltzing with her father, she heard a clap of thunder. Lightning flashed again and again. Suddenly, the double doors blew open and a breeze whirled in, bringing with it the smell of dead, decaying things. Mad Henry loomed in the doorway, pupils gleaming red with anger. He was followed by the grotesque figures of the dead, who came marching 2 by 2 into the room. Their eye sockets glowed with blue fire as they surrounded the room. 2 of the corpses captured Jeffrey and threw him down at the feet of their lord. Red eyes gleaming, Mad Henry drew a silver-bladed knife and casually cut the bridegroom's throat from ear to ear. Rachel screamed and ran forward, pushing through the foul, stinking corpses of the dead, and flung herself upon her dying husband. "Kill us both!" she cried desperately. But Mad Henry plucked the lass out of the pool of blood surrounding her dead husband and carried her out into the thundering night. Behind him, the army of the dead turned from the grisly scene and followed their master. The sounds of thunder and lightning faded away as the alchemist and his dead companions disappeared into the dark night. Jeffrey's father and Rachel's father gathered a small mob and followed the evil hermit, intent upon saving Rachel. When they searched Mad Henry's house, they found it completely empty save for a light which shone from a series of mysterious globes that bobbled near the ceiling of each room. Mad Henry had vanished. Search parties scoured the countryside for days, but turned up nothing. Jeffrey was buried in the local cemetery, and the dance hall was torn down. No one in town spoke about what happened, and no one dared imagine what had become of poor Rachel. A year to the day after the ball, a timid knock sounded upon the door of Rachel's parents' home. When her father opened it, he saw a gaunt, gray figure on the stoop. Her eyes were dull with exhaustion and pain. It was Rachel. Her tongue had been cut out, so she could not speak. But when she produced a knife from her tattered garments, the knife with a silver blade that they had last seen in the hands of Mad Henry, the gleam of satisfaction in Rachel's eyes told them that the streaks of blood that coated the knife were those of Mad Henry. That night, Rachel died in her sleep with a peaceful smile upon her ravaged face. Oh.
Nothing but a ravaged face there, huh? What about this one? The Mark of the Spirit Hand. Have you done that one? Andover, New Jersey was quaint and quiet in the days before the American Revolution. It offered a few social advantages. There was more gathering in tap rooms and more drinking of spirits than there should have been. Among those who were not averse to a cheering cup were three boon companions, Bailey, Hill, and Evans, farmers of the neighborhood. They were discussing matters of belief over their glasses that one of them proposed, in a spirit of bravado, that whichever of the trio might be first to die should come back from the grave and reveal himself to the others, if he could, thus settling the question as to whether there was a future. Not long after this agreement, for consent was unanimous, Hill departed this life. His friends lamented his absence, especially at the tavern, but they anticipated no attempt on his part to express the distinguished consideration that he had felt for his old chums. Some weeks passed, yet there were no sign, and the two survivors of the party, as they jogged homeward to the house where they both lived, had begun to think and speak less frequently of the absent one. Then, one night, the household was alarmed by a terrible cry. Bailey got a light and hurried to the bedside of his friend, whom he found deathly white and holding his chest as if in pain. "He has been here," gasped Evans. "He stood here just now." "Who?" asked Bailey, a creep passing down his spine. "Hill. He stood there, where you are now, and touched me with a hand that was so cold. And Evans shivered violently. When he pushed back the collar of his shirt, Bailey found an impression of a hand appeared on the flesh near the shoulder, a hand in white, with one finger missing. It was the same finger Hill had lost in an accident long ago. There was less of taverns after that night, for Evans carried the token of that ghostly visit on his person until he, too, had gone to solve the great secret. End of story.
End of story.
Oh, there we go. Look. There we go. Work.
No,
At the end
wait,
of the
I
story,
don't
we have a
think-
request. We have a request.
Not
Let's
gonna do it.
honor
Not
this
gonna do
request. We
Not
have to
gonna
honor the request.
Not
Okay.
gonna do it. Not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. I see what you're doing over there with your grin on your face. He's pulling it up. He's gonna show it. God, who wants to see old flabby butt waggling?
Clearly, it's just it's a thing, man.
It's a thing, man. What about this next story I was gonna tell?
Oh, you go ahead.
Well, this is another version of Bloody Mary that I found here. She lived deep in the forest in a tiny cottage and sold herbal remedies for a living. Folks living in town nearby called her Bloody Mary and said she was a witch. None dared cross the old crone for fear that their cows would go dry. There's
Stay
food.
tuned. Stay tuned, Billy Bird. You're gonna see it.
Their food stores rot away before winter, their children's take sick of fever, or any number of terrible things that an angry witch could do to her neighbors. Then the little girls in the village began to disappear, one by one. No one could find out where they had gone. Grief-stricken families searched the woods, the local buildings, and all the houses and barns, but there was no sign of the missing girls. A few brave souls even went to Bloody Mary's home in the woods to see if the witch had taken the girls, but she denied any knowledge of the disappearances. Still, it was noted that her haggard appearance had changed. She looked younger, more attractive. The neighbors were suspicious, but they could find no proof that the witch had taken their young ones. Then came the night when the daughter of the miller rose from her bed and walked outside, following an enchanted sound that no one else could hear. The miller's wife had a toothache and was sitting up in the kitchen treating the tooth with an herbal remedy when her daughter left the house. She screamed for her husband and followed the girl out of the door. The miller came running in his nightshirt. Together they tried to restrain the girl, but she kept breaking away from them and heading out of town. The desperate cries of the miller and his wife woke the neighbors. They came to assist the frantic couple. Suddenly, a sharp-eyed farmer gave a shout and pointed towards a strange light at the edge of the woods. A few townsmen followed him out into the field and saw Bloody Mary standing beside a large oak tree, holding a magic wand that was pointed toward the miller's house. She was glowing with an unearthly light as she set her evil spell upon the miller's daughter. The townsmen grabbed their guns and their pitchforks and ran toward the witch. When she heard the commotion, Bloody Mary broke off her spell and fled back into the woods. The far-sighted farmer had loaded his gun with silver bullets in case the witch ever came after his daughter. Now he took aim and shot at her. The bullet hit Bloody Mary in the hip, and she fell to the ground. The angry townsmen leaped upon her and carried her back into the field, where they built a huge bonfire and burned her at the stake. As she burned, Bloody Mary screamed a curse at the villagers. If anyone mentioned her name aloud before a mirror, she would send her spirit to revenge herself upon them for her terrible death. When she was dead, the villagers went to the house in the wood and found the unmarked graves of the little girls the evil witch had murdered. She had used their blood to make her young again. From that day to this, anyone foolish enough to chant Bloody Mary's name 3 times before a darkened mirror will summon the vengeful spirit of the witch. It is said that she will tear their bodies to pieces and rip their souls from their mutilated bodies. The souls of these unfortunate ones will burn in torment as Bloody Mary was once burned, and they will be trapped forever in the mirror. All right, man.
Wish you lived with all of that.
Oh,
You wish.
I wish.
Oh, okay. So the crazy girl said you need to do a little twerking, Kevin.
I ain't twerking.
There you go.
This ain't that kind of show. This
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, before the show ends, Kevin is going to do his
oh,
Miley Cyrus impersonation. Party like it. What's her song? Party what?
Party in the USA.
Yeah. Oh, he knows. Come on, let's go.
I could say, well, Magic 96 hours.
Just Kevin, come on. Stand aside. Stand
I'm
aside.
singing my stars. And then you really want me to do a lot of fat love.
Absolutely.
You got some strange interest over
Yeah.
Has he ever claimed to be normal?
I would think my flute playing would be better than
But I think twerking while you play the flute, that's got to rock.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I'm too big to do I'm too fat to do twerk.
Oh,
Kevin.
You'll bust it, baby.
I bust my pants, yeah.
What's that other song? Let's see about Big Bus.
I like
He's
it.
like,
I'm a great girl.
Okay. we made Billy Bird very happy now. Okay, so you did.
oh my
bird-
God, it's Billy Bird. Where have you been?
Where have you been?
She's been out there picking her nose. She had one finger up her ass and the other in her nose.
Me?
I thought she was going to do card readings.
So I got another version of Bloody Mary. How's that?
Okay.
Mary, Mary, the half-heard whisper woke her in the darkness before dawn. Darkness, how appropriate. These days it seemed as if her whole life was in darkness. It had not always been this way. She was born at the Palace of Placentia in Greenwich, England on February 18, 1516. As the eldest daughter and only surviving child of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, Mary was baptized a Catholic shortly after her birth. Mary lived the life of a privileged princess in the English court. Then things began to go wrong. The king wanted a son to rule after him, so Henry VII changed his religious affiliation from Catholic to Protestant, annulled his marriage to Mary's mother, and married Anne Boleyn in the hopes that this new queen would bear him a son. Mary was embittered by her father's treatment of her mother and angered by his blatant religious heresy. It was not right that the king and his people should abandon the Catholic Church just because the king's wish to annul an unwanted marriage. To Mary's further outrage, Queen Anne, following the birth of her daughter Elizabeth, pressed for an act of parliament to declare Mary illegitimate. This placed the former princess outside the succession to the throne. To add insult to injury, Mary was forced to serve to the household of her young stepsister as a reminder of her new status as an illegitimate child. The memory made Mary's stomach roil. She rolled over in bed and pulled the pillow over her head. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, the dream whisper came again. Mary clasped her hands over her ears to block it out. The dream voice had plagued her sleep ever since her father's annulment. It was true, she felt contrary most of the time these days, angry with her parents, angry with a country that would change its religion at the whim of their king, angry at everything. As the sky outside the window turned gray in the approaching dawn, Mary continued to brood over the bloody reign of her royal father. In 1536, Henry and Anne beheaded and married his third wife, Jane Seymour, who gave birth to Edward, the long-desired male heir. Jane Seymour insisted that the king make amends with his daughter Mary, and so she re-entered the royal court. But Mary was an outsider now. She was a faithful Catholic, and everyone around her was a despised Protestant. "How does your garden grow?" the dream voice murmured soothingly to Mary as the sun rose over the horizon. When her father died, Mary's half-brother Edward VI took the throne. He was a consumptive young man, and Mary knew his reign could not last. But Edward was a Protestant and did not want his Catholic half-sister to take the throne. At the contrivance, the powerful Duke of Northumberland, Edward had his cousin Lady Jane Grey appointed as the heir to the throne, and when Edward died, Lady Jane would be the new Queen of England, and the Duke could control her through his son. Edward fell very ill at the age of 15. Mary was on her way to visit her dying half-brother when a breathless spy hailed Mary's entourage and told Mary her brother had died and that the Duke of Northumberland had seized control of the Tower of London and its armory. He had posted a double line of armed guards round Greenwich Palace to prevent news of the king's death from becoming known, and had ordered out a cavalry troop to capture Mary. So Mary hid from the Duke's troops at Sawston Hall, the home of her loyal subject, Sir John Hunsdon. She had spent a restless night in a four-poster bed, the tapestry room of Sawston Hall, and lay now brooding over the unfairness of the fate in the dim light of morning. "Quite contrary," the dream voice murmured again. All at once Mary heard a shout from the roof. She sat up in bed, alarmed by the cry. A moment later, a maid ran into the room to tell her that a band of cavalry was rapidly approaching the house. Mary was disguised as a milkmaid and hustled out of the house into the courtyard, from which she rode pillion behind one of St. John's grooms, while Sir John himself escorted her. When they looked back from the hilltop, they saw the Duke of Northumberland's men setting fire to the house, angry that Mary had escaped their grasp escape. Mary drew in a proud breath from her perch behind the groom and said to her host and rescuer, "Let it blaze. When I am queen, I will build the Hunsdon a better house." She kept her word. Mary wrote a letter laying claim to the English throne and raised an army against Northumberland. As soon as Northumberland was defeated, Mary ordered Sawston Hall rebuilt. She later honored Sir John with a knighthood and appointed him as a privy councillor, vice chamberlain, and captain of Her Majesty's bodyguard. Queen at last, Mary gloated when she finally sat alone in front of her palace mirror before bed. For a moment, She saw flames flickering around her head and torso, but it was only a sudden blazing of the wood in the fireplace as the pine bough caught fire. Tomorrow she would begin repealing those shameful religious edicts put in place by her half-brother Edward VI. She would bring Roman Catholic faith back to England. We need to bring back the old heresy laws. That is what we must do, Mary murmured to herself as she lay down. On the edge of sleep, she thought she heard the dream voice whisper, "How does your garden grow?" Mary's Catholic reforms were not popular among the nobility. This proved to Mary how corrupt her country had become under the Protestant faith. She was determined to secure a Catholic succession, knowing that if she remained childless, the throne would pass to her Protestant half-sister Elizabeth. At the age of 37, she had no time to waste. To accomplish her goal, she arranged to marry Philip, King of Spain. Philip was a handsome fellow, 10 years younger than Queen Mary. She was smitten with him as soon as she saw his portrait. Philip was less taken with her, but he conducted himself in an acceptable manner during their wedding and afterward. In September of 1554, a court doctor told Mary that she was pregnant. At 38, there was much concern that she would not survive childbirth. The council ruled that should Mary die in childbirth, the British throne would pass to her child and not to her husband. Realizing that the council would never let him rule England, Philip gave up all pretense of regard for his wife or his unborn child. Mary's heart was broken by her husband's withdrawal. As she awaited her confinement, she turned her attention to something she could control, the punishment of heretics. In February 1555, she had 2 Protestant clergy burned at the stake. That night, she dreamed of the fire of Swanston House. In her dream, she saw the faces of the dead Protestants hovering in the flames and heard a voice whispering, "Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow?" Shortly after Easter, Mary went to Hampton Court for her confinement. On April 30, a rumor spread that she had given birth to a healthy son. But when no official word came from Hampton Court, the public realized the rumor was false. May came and went. Queen Mary was still childless. By June, it was apparent the Queen had a false pregnancy, probably brought on by her intense desire to have a child. In her anxiety and confusion, Mary blamed the Protestant heretics for bewitching her so that her long-desired child could not be born. In a bitter twist of fate, her husband Philip left England soon after Mary came out of confinement, and he stayed away from her for 2 years while he fought a war against France. This was the final straw for Mary. In her mind, the Protestants had cost her the succession and her husband. She would make the heretics pay dearly for their interference. There were so many Protestants in England that Mary could not order executions fast enough. Every Protestant she burned at the stake was another win for her poor unborn child and for her dead mother whom the king had divorced. People started calling the Queen Bloody Mary, but she did not care. She had to wipe the Protestant scourge from the face of England. And then her husband Philip returned in 1557. Hope blazed in Mary's heart. She had another chance at redemption. Surely, this time she would bear him a son. It was true that he had only returned because he needed England's help in his war with France, and she knew that he had brought a mistress with him, but Mary didn't care. Only conception of a Catholic heir was important now. So Mary ignored the mistress and attempted to reconcile with her husband and win his war for him. She failed in both regards. Philip lost his war and left Mary for good this time. Still, Mary fooled herself into thinking she was pregnant again. When 9 months passed and no child came, Mary sank into despair. Late in the fall of 1558, an extremely ill Queen Mary lay brooding in her bed, watching the flames from the fireplace flicker in the mirror. Thoughts whirled through her feverish mind. Her Roman Catholic beliefs had lost her the support of the nobles and most of the countrymen. and her childhood state and the edicts of the council had lost Mary, her husband. Now some court wag, if she knew who he would have been beheaded him, had invented a nursery rhyme aimed at her. As she gazed unseeing into the mirror, Mary heard the dream voice that had plagued her most of her adult life, chanting the words to the nursery rhyme. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. Such an innocent sounding rhyme, but the garden in the rhyme actually referred to the number of Protestants she had sent to the graveyard. The silver bells and cockle shells were torture devices, and the pretty maids in a row were guillotines. How dare the nobles mock her? How dare they? Mary felt death tiptoeing near, and there was no child, no one to prevent her Protestant half-sister from taking the throne. Mary felt a tear roll down her cheek and drop to the pillow beneath her aching, heavy head. On the edge of sleep, Mary thought she heard a dream voice crooning, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? She closed her eyes and felt her soul dropping away from her weary body in death. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, the dream voice spoke sharply. Bloody Mary snapped awake, feeling lighter than she had in many years. She frowned, puzzled by what her eyes beheld. She saw a back-to-front picture of her bedchamber, as if she were looking at it through a mirror. Standing in front of the mirror was her half-sister Elizabeth, wearing an elaborate coronation gown. Ladies in waiting fluttered about Elizabeth, making last-minute adjustments to her apparel. Mary was furious. How dare her Protestant half-sister flaunt herself in a coronation gown as if she were the queen? Bloody Mary flung herself forward, wanting to tear the lovely garments from her half-sister's body and wipe the satisfied smile from her face. Mary's body slammed into the unbreakable glass. With a scream of rage, Mary pounded her fist against the barrier until blood poured down her arms. Suddenly, Mary felt flames licking the bottom of her skirt. Blistering heat burned her skin and blew her hair up in an aureole around her face, twisted up with hate and pain. Blood from her hands dripped down the inside of the mirror and pooled around the flames without extinguishing them. Mary screamed, but no sound came out of her parched lips as the dream voice whispered triumphantly, Bloody Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow?
Whoa.
Well, Kevin's got a whiskey problem. I'm sorry to
I
tell you.
have iced tea in this glass.
The ice, yeah, it's called Long Island tea.
No, it's called Louisiana sweet tea.
I'm about to have a Long Island tea.
So Billy Bird says I'm going to have nightmares tonight. Thanks a lot. You're quite welcome, Billy Bird. You're very welcome. Is there anything else we can do for you, Billy Bird?
LOL, doctor.
Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil.
Well,
Dr.
you know
LOL.
what? We got just enough time for me to share something. We sang promote to us. Where's my stuff though? It's all gone here. Wait a minute. No, that's not it. What? I'm lost. I'm just totally lost.
You're always lost.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, let me back out of there. Let's see if this. I found it. There you go. So there's mine at the bottom. I don't have to repeat it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Read scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And then Kevin, he's got a couple of minutes he can tell you about his writings.
Oh, I can see about mine. Yay.
Do us a favor, Kevin. Just please. I beg you. Don't get all preachy tonight.
Don't get all preachy tonight. We got Where is it? There it is. myhauntedDolls.com.
Yeah, don't that look like
You can,
yeah.
yeah, don't that look like a great website to go shop for Christmas? Christmas is around the
Yeah,
corner.
Kevin went in debt a huge amount of money because he just decided he was going to outbid everybody to get a coffee cup that once belonged to Betty White, and now he's got to work for 17 freaking years to pay for a stupid coffee cup because
That's
it one time sat on her kitchen counter that she never drank out of it. It just gathered dust and roaches.
That's a tea caddy that she made you. Talk ahead. Okay. My Haunted Collection. And then it's got a sequel. My Haunted Collection, The Dark Side. So get those both today. And then I got all kinds of scary, creepy novels to help give nightmares to you viewers out there. Crimson the Blood Painting, based on an actual haunted painting, is just one of them. And there's others out there. Some novels I have based on some of my haunted dolls. And then you got a short story collection. Those are my original short, scary stories. Dark Awakening and Other Tales for a Midnight Hour. And then the newest book is a little more inspirational, a little more happier. Fear Not, Weep Not, Scriptures of My Life and Others Too. Just an inspirational book about some scriptures that have helped me out in my life, and maybe they might help you. So any of those would be a great stocking stuffer. And they're at Amazon.
Beware, because if you read one of his books, you'll become a haunted doll.
Aren't you funny? So funny. Oh, have a frightening Halloween, he says to us.
Oh my goodness. See, this is what happens when you spend too much time with a haunted doll collector.
Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. See, I got the real haunted doll.
You don't get more realer than this haunted doll. Okay, that's enough of that.
Here, I'll scare you guys for a minute.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us again tonight. We really miss you. And Kevin, yeah, creepy, right? Kevin is creepy. Look at that face.
He's talking about you and your doll head.
Look at that face. Well, it is about quitting time, and we're going to be back. Oh, so before we come back next Tuesday, first of all, Catherine, Lady Cat Marie, has been doing a nightly show starting at 9 p.m. If you care to join us then, Billy Bird, or join her as she goes through routines. Then next Monday night is what? Halloween. And so let me put this up here. I don't think Billy Bird has seen this, but look at this, Billy Bird, right there. Lady Cat. I am the Kilted Magician. Myself and Cat Marie are putting on a live show at Courtyard 31, 1187 First Avenue North in Alabaster, Alabama. And if you can't come, we will stream at least part of it on the internets. So remember, Monday night, 7 p.m. Yes. And yeah. We wish you all a Merry Halloween.
Yes.
It's the Halloween that Grinch sent us.
Oh, boy. All right.
If you really want to do us a favor, Billy Bird, you will take and you will share this video with everybody you know and then some you don't know. You'll hit the like button. You'll hit the share button. You'll put the little bell up there that'll notify you every time we put something on the YouTubes and the Facebook. Did you join us on the Facebook group, Abnormal Alabama? And then Catherine Marie created a special TikTok account. What is that TikTok account, Catherine?
Abnormal Alabama, Catherine Marie. Or Catherine.
Right. Something like that. Catherine Marie, Abnormal Alabama, TikTok. So join us, be a friend. And Kevin, put your arms down.
All right, it's 9 o'clock. So I
It's
guess
Abnormal Alabama, Catherine.
It's
Alabama,
9 o'clock on a
Alabama.
Saturday. Regular crowd shuffles in.
Catherine
All
saying
right.
it's abnormal, Catherine, or
It's
Say
abnormal Alabama Cat Marie.
oh, okay.
Peace and love.
Yes, peace
Not,
and love.
not necessarily in that order. Not necessarily in that order.
Good night.
Hey, Lady Cat, are you doing something tomorrow night?
Good night.